is nothing more dangerous than a man who doesn't know where his line is, not just for the world, but for himself. A man without boundaries is not strong. He is not kind. He is not easygoing. He is bleeding silently while smiling loudly. Let me tell you something most men were never taught. Your peace is your power, your time, your energy, your mind. They are not public property. They are sacred. But if you do not protect them, the world will misuse them. Women will cross them. Friends will drain them. Family will guilt trip you. And worst of all, you will betray yourself just to keep everyone else happy. You don't owe the world your exhaustion. You don't owe your past self eternal sacrifice. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world just because they demand it. A man who sets boundaries is not rude. He is rare. And rare men are respected, not because they shout, not because they dominate, but because they refuse to bend where they know they must stand. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about choosing yourself. When you say no, you're not being harsh, you're being honest. When you take space, you're not being distant, you're being self-aware. When you walk away from what disrespects your spirit, you're not being arrogant, you're being aligned. You don't teach people how to love you with your words. You teach them with your standards. You teach them with your consistency. You teach them by showing up for yourself every single time. Too many men have been raised to be emotionally available to everyone but themselves. You weren't built to be a sponge for people's chaos. You were built to channel your strength, your focus, your masculinity into something deeper, into purpose, into discipline, into grounded leadership. A man without boundaries is at war with his identity. He says yes when he means no. He stays when he should walk away. He gives when his soul is starving. He compromises on things he once swore he never would. But let me tell you something. You don't rise by pleasing others. You rise by honoring your truth. You will never be too much for the right people, and you will never be enough for the ones who benefit from your silence. So protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. Be selective with who gets your time. Be disciplined with where you place your energy, and stop apologizing for needing space to breathe, to think, to build. You are not a fixer. You are not a savior. You are a man. And your role is not to save others at the cost of losing yourself. Stop entertaining what drains you. Stop explaining your worth. Negotiate your boundaries with people who wouldn't even flinch if you lost yourself in the process. Silence is a boundary. Distance is a boundary. Not replying, not showing up, not allowing repeated disrespect. All boundaries. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to be taken seriously. You just have to act like your peace is non-negotiable. And here's the truth. When you start setting boundaries, you're going to lose people. People who loved your yes. People who relied on your self-betrayal. People who thought they had unlimited access to you. Let them go. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you selfish. They let them label you arrogant, because at the end of the day, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to become the man you were born to be. And that man, he protects his space, he values his voice, he chooses his peace, and he leads himself with power, not people-pleasing. So set the boundary and watch your life elevate. There is a point in every man's life when he must stop blaming the world for his exhaustion and begin to question why he keeps opening the door to chaos. Not everything that demands your attention deserves your presence. Not everyone who asks for your time deserves your energy. And not every situation that calls for you to respond is worthy of your spirit. But you will never recognize that truth unless you learn to protect the very thing that makes you powerful, your peace. Peace is not just silence. Peace is not just the absence of noise. Peace is presence, clarity, stillness in the soul. And without boundaries, peace cannot survive. Because if you don't build a fence around your mind, people will treat it like an open field, trampling over it with their projections, their drama, their demands, and their inability to manage themselves. If you don't draw the line, the world will stretch you thin until you're a shell of who you once were. The man who is constantly available is the man who is secretly overwhelmed. He wears a smile in public and a war on his heart. He gives more than he has. He listens more than he's heard. He helps more than he's helped, and he does it all in silence, thinking it makes him stronger. But true strength is not in how much you carry, it's in what you refuse to carry anymore. When a man starts to set boundaries, he's not becoming selfish, he's becoming self-aware. He's learning that not every cry is a call for him to save. Not every message is an emergency. Not every request is an assignment, and not every relationship is healthy just because it's long-standing. Some of the most exhausting connections are the ones we were too afraid to walk away from. Some of the most damaging dynamics are the ones we kept nurturing out of guilt, not growth. Your peace is your foundation, and everything you build, your success, your focus, your vision, it all depends on that foundation. If your mind is constantly interrupted, your goals will constantly suffer. If your soul is constantly agitated, your decisions will constantly reflect instability. You cannot show up for your purpose if you are constantly responding to other people's chaos. A man with boundaries is a man with priorities. He doesn't respond to everything because he doesn't need to. He doesn't engage in every conflict because he knows peace is more valuable than proving a point. He doesn't say yes to every invitation because he knows his time is a limited currency. And he doesn't apologize for choosing silence over simulation or solitude over superficial connection. There is a difference between being generous and being used. A man without boundaries often mistakes people-pleasing for kindness. But people-pleasing is not kindness, it is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being called difficult, fear of disappointing others. But here's the truth. The people who love you only when you betray yourself for them don't really love you. They love their control over you. And the moment you start setting boundaries, they will show you their true colors. But that is a good thing, because peace isn't just something you protect, it's something you earn through alignment, through honesty, through choosing your truth over comfort, through walking away from what looks good but feels wrong, through being misunderstood if it means being mentally whole. Peace comes at a price. And that price is often disconnection from those who never respected your soul to begin with. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you never engage. It means you choose your battles wisely. It means you know when to speak and when silence is louder. It means you know when to stay and when to walk away. It means you no longer see your worth through how much you tolerate, but how deeply you honor your inner world. Power is not loud, power is still. A man in his power doesn't react to everything. He observes, he reflects, he decides. His energy is not scattered because his focus is disciplined. And that discipline comes from boundaries, knowing when to disconnect, knowing when to rest, knowing when to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. If your peace is constantly disturbed, you are not in control of your life. Your triggers are, your surroundings are, your people are. And as long as you allow access to anyone and everyone, you will always be pulled in 100 directions, never quite grounded, never quite home in your own mind. Boundaries bring you back to yourself. Every time you say, this doesn't work for me, you are reaffirming your worth. Every time you choose quiet over chaos, you are building your power. Every time you choose to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you are reclaiming the authority over your soul. Men are often taught that strength means endurance, but true strength is knowing what not to endure. It's knowing when to let go, when to detach, when to walk away from familiar dysfunction, when to say, I love myself enough to protect myself, even from you. That's not cold, that's clarity. And a man with clarity is unstoppable. You don't need to be available all the time. You don't need to respond to every call. You don't need to prove your worth by how much you endure. You don't need to explain your choices to people who only value you when you're useful to them. Your peace is not negotiable. Your energy is not infinite. Your mind is not a dumping ground. You deserve relationships that don't require you to abandon yourself. You will never reach your full potential if you are constantly tolerating what drains you. Success doesn't grow in chaos. Vision doesn't thrive in noise. Purpose doesn't bloom in confusion. Protecting your peace is not just for your mental health, it is for your future. Because the man who is constantly at war within himself, boundaries are not walls, they are doors. Doors you open for the right people, doors you close for those who don't respect your value. And every time you close a door to dysfunction, you create space for alignment. Every time you say no to what violates your spirit, you say yes to what heals it. You are not cold for needing space. You are not rude for not tolerating disrespect. You are not difficult for having standards. You are not arrogant for protecting your energy. You are simply choosing growth over guilt. And that is the kind of choice that separates men who lead from men who follow. Your life changes the moment you realize that not everything requires your attention, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. No reaction, no reply, no engagement, just silence, distance, and presence with yourself. That is power. That is maturity. That is peace. And once you taste that peace, you will stop allowing anyone to disturb it. You will no longer entertain meaningless debates. You will no longer try to fix people who refuse to grow. You will no longer sit at tables where your soul is starving. Because you have learned that your peace is not a reward you get after suffering. It's a right you protect every day. You don't owe everyone access to you. And the moment you realize that, you take your power back. Power doesn't scream. Power doesn't chase. Power doesn't beg. Power doesn't over-explain. Power simply is rooted, present, unbothered. There comes a point in a man's life where he must stop living on the edge of other people's comfort. A point where he no longer defines his worth by how often he says yes. A point where he wakes up to the truth that every time he said yes, when his heart whispered no, he abandoned a piece of himself. Because saying no is not rudeness, it is clarity, it is strength. It is the bold declaration that you will no longer betray yourself just to be liked. The world has trained men to confuse compliance with kindness. To be agreeable is to be accepted. To be self-sacrificing is to be respected. To be accommodating is to be admirable. But how many men are secretly angry, secretly tired, secretly drowning under the weight of everyone else's expectations because they never learned how to say one simple word with confidence: no. When you say no, you are not being difficult. You are being deliberate. You are not shutting someone out. You are choosing yourself. And that choice, though often misunderstood, is the most powerful act of self-respect a man can make. Because when you say no to what depletes you, you make room for what strengthens you. When you say no to what dishonors your values, you open space for what aligns with your purpose. When you say no to what disrespects your time, you protect the life you're building. There is nothing noble about constantly being available. There is no prize for being the man who is always there, always saying yes, always rescuing others while slowly losing himself. That man is not strong. He is silently suffering. He is nodding when he wants to walk away. He is agreeing when he wants to scream. He is smiling while shrinking. You are not meant to be a servant to the expectations of others. You are not built to be endlessly accommodating at the expense of your well-being. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to have preferences. You are allowed to want something different, something more, something healthier. And the only way to honor that truth is by learning to say no without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. The fear of saying no is rooted in the fear of rejection. We think, if I say no, they'll leave. If I say no, I'll disappoint them. If I say no, I'll be judged, misunderstood, maybe even alone. But the cost of constantly saying yes is much greater, because every yes you give when your soul means no chips away at your authenticity. And eventually, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You become a character you created for survival, not a man standing in truth. People may call you cold, let them. People may say you've changed, you have. And that's the point. People may try to make you feel guilty. Let them sit with their discomfort because it's not yours to fix. You are not responsible for managing how others respond to your boundaries. You are responsible for staying true to the man you are becoming. No is not a rejection of others. It is a reflection of self-awareness. It is the voice of a man who has finally decided that his inner world matters, that his time is valuable, that his energy is sacred, that his dreams are not up for negotiation. And when you begin to live from that place, you stop entertaining what drains you. You stop explaining yourself to those who never cared to understand. You stop apologizing for needing space, rest, clarity, or direction. You stop honoring yourself. You start realizing that every time you say no to distractions, you say yes to discipline. Every time you say no to toxicity, you say yes to healing. Every time you say no to meaningless validation, you say yes to deep fulfillment. And that shift, though uncomfortable at first, is where your real growth begins. You're not rude for protecting your space. You're not selfish for guarding your peace. You're not arrogant for choosing silence over small talk or truth over people pleasing. You are simply becoming a man who values himself enough to be intentional with his yes and unapologetic with his no. The strength to say no is not about building walls. It's about building alignment. It's about choosing what feeds your soul, not what flatters your ego. It's about knowing the difference between being liked and being respected, because many men are liked, but very few are respected. And the respect begins the moment you stop bending to be accepted. You were not put on this earth to please everyone. You were not born to be agreeable, compliant, and passive. You were born to lead your life with intention, to move with purpose, to protect your spirit like the sacred ground it is. And leadership begins with boundaries. Leadership begins with discernment. Leadership begins with the courage to say no. No to what doesn't align. No to what delays your growth. No to what brings more confusion than clarity. No to the cycles that keep repeating because you're too afraid to break the pattern. No to relationships that feel more like a performance than a connection. No to conversations where your voice isn't heard. No to people who love the version of you that sacrifices everything but resent the version of you that finally chooses himself. Your no is a filter. It reveals who respects you and who only benefited from your silence. It reveals who loves you for who you are and who loved you for what you did for them. It reveals who's willing to grow with you and who's only comfortable when you shrink. And here's what they don't tell you. Saying no will hurt sometimes. You will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will second guess yourself in the beginning, but every time you choose yourself over the need to be liked, you grow stronger. Every time you protect your boundaries over the urge to fix things for others, you gain clarity. Every time you say no with love but firmness, you build the muscle of self-respect. You are not responsible for carrying everyone. You are not required to explain every choice. You are not a product to be consumed, evaluated, or used. You are a man on a journey, and part of that journey is recognizing that not everyone can walk with you. Not every opportunity is right. Not every request is aligned, and not every relationship deserves your continued investment. You were not made to say yes to everything. You were made to say yes to what aligns and no to what doesn't, because every no that is rooted in truth comes a step toward freedom. And freedom is the highest form of strength. You don't need to yell. You don't need to justify. You don't need to react. Just say it calmly, clearly, confidently. No, not right now, not this time, not for me, not anymore. There is a heaviness that men carry in silence, a weight that doesn't show in their eyes but lives deep in their chest. It's the burden of being everything for everyone, the pressure to be the provider, the healer, the protector, the answer, the solution, the expectation that somehow they must fix what's broken in others, even when they're breaking inside themselves. But the truth is, you are not here to save everyone. I'll try fix. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you will breathe freely again. You will stop running toward every fire that someone else started. You will stop drowning in problems that were never yours to carry. You will stop trying to be the light for people who refuse to open their eyes. You will stop bleeding just to keep someone else warm. Because saving everyone is not love, it's self-abandonment. You can't heal someone who keeps reopening their wounds for attention. You can't guide someone who's committed to staying lost. You can't build for someone who keeps tearing things down. And no matter how strong your intentions, no matter how pure your heart, some people are not looking to be saved. They're looking for someone to blame when they don't change. Don't let that someone be you. There's a difference between support and sacrifice. A man who supports empowers. A man who sacrifices everything loses himself. And when a man loses himself, when he forgets his own needs, his own path, his own limits, he doesn't become more noble, he becomes invisible. He becomes so invested in helping others rise that he forgets to stand tall himself. You were never meant to be a savior. You were meant to be a man with purpose, a man with clarity, a man who can love deeply without losing direction, who can care without being consumed, who can give without going empty. Saving people is not your job. It's their choice. And the moment you take responsibility for someone else's healing, you rob them of their power. You become their crutch instead of their mirror. Because real love doesn't rescue, it reflects. Real support doesn't fix, it empowers. And real strength is knowing when to step back, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand that your care cannot outweigh someone else's willingness. You cannot walk someone else's path. You cannot force growth. You cannot create change for someone who's comfortable in dysfunction. It is not your fault that someone refuses to rise. It is not your failure if someone chooses to remain the same. And it is not your job to save someone who is perfectly content staying broken. Sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes kindness means saying no. Sometimes the greatest act of compassion is letting someone face their consequences, even if it hurts to watch. Because men who try to save everyone often end up resenting the very people they tried to help. They give and give, only to be blamed when it's not enough. They pour out their strength only to be met with ingratitude. They hold the weight of others' choices only to be criticized for how heavy it feels. And in the end, they sit in silence, wondering why their love always feels like a burden instead of a blessing. But here's the truth. Your love isn't the problem. Your effort isn't the issue. Your presence, your passion, your protection, they are all powerful, but they are not meant for everyone, and certainly not meant to replace someone's willingness to do the work. You can love someone and still not be responsible for them. You can be there for someone and still say, this is where I stop and you must begin. Boundaries are not abandonment, they are clarity. And clarity is what keeps a man from losing his fire to everyone else's darkness. You were never created to fix what people refuse to face. You were created to build, to lead, to create, to rise. And yes, part of your purpose may be to help others, but not at the cost of yourself. Not when helping becomes enabling, not when love becomes rescue missions, not when connection becomes chains. You have to ask yourself, why do you feel the need to save everyone? Why do you keep entering relationships where you're the fixer, the therapist, the constant solution? Is it because it gives you a sense of worth? Is it because chaos feels familiar? Is it because deep down you don't know how to receive, only how to give? That pattern is not strength. That pattern is survival. And at some point, survival must evolve into healing. You are allowed to choose peace over obligation. You are allowed to walk away from roles that exhaust you. You are allowed to say, I love you, but I can't do this for you. That is not selfish, that is sacred. Because a man who constantly tries to save others eventually needs saving himself. And who will be there when you're drained? Who will pick you up when your strength is gone? Who will pour into you when you've spent every last drop? You have to learn to be discerning with your energy. You have to understand the difference between helping someone rise and carrying someone who refuses to stand. You have to know when your presence is becoming a crutch, when your love is becoming permission for someone to avoid responsibility. And you have to have the strength to say, this is not mine to carry. Because if you keep trying to save everyone, you will lose yourself. You will be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. You will be applauded for your generosity and still feel empty. You will be admired for your strength and still feel weak, not because you gave it all away without pause, without boundaries, without protection. Your soul was not built for constant repair work. Your heart was not made to be a recycling bin for people's unresolved trauma. Your time is not a donation. Your mind is not a rescue shelter. You are allowed to exist for more than the service of others. You are allowed to pour into yourself, to build your vision, to walk your path, to rest without guilt, to say no without explanation. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cold for saying, I cannot do this anymore. You are not unkind for recognizing that your love cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. You are not cruel for choosing peace over chaos. You are just finally awake. You are finally honoring the truth that being everything for everyone leaves nothing for you. The right people will never ask you to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. The right people will meet you halfway. They will take responsibility. They will do their work. They will grow beside you. You won't have to drag them. You won't have to beg them to rise. They will rise with you. And that is the only kind of relationship you should be investing in. Reciprocal, respectful, rooted in mutual growth. You are not here to save everyone. And the moment you stop trying to, you will start to see your own life clearly. You will start to notice your own needs again. You will start to reconnect with your own vision. You will start to create from a place of fullness instead of fatigue. You will become a man who gives from abundance, not from depletion. Because your job is not to fix people. Your job is to live in truth. Your job is not to carry people through every season. Your job is to stand in purpose. Your job is not to suffer silently in the name of loyalty. Your job is to protect your peace and share your love wisely. Some will not understand. Some will call you selfish. Some will say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have. You've grown. You've healed. You've remembered who you are. You've stepped back into your power. And with that power comes a new kind of freedom. The freedom to say, I am not here to save you. I am here to live fully, love wisely, and lead boldly. And I do not owe anyone the sacrifice of myself.